So hello and welcome to the Talks Night podcast. Today we've got Rob from Little Comets and we've got Harry here also. How are you, man?
Not bad, how are you?
Yeah, good. So we're finally coming towards the end of 2020 and it's been a long year. I mean, I was talking to the missus the other day and she said it's been the longest, shortest year. I felt like it doesn't really make sense, but it does because it's flown by, but it hasn't half-dragged. So how's it been for you?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. We were watching a television programme last night, me and my partner, and I said, this is one of the best things we've seen since, I think I mentioned, I can't remember what the programme was called, and she was like, when did we watch that? And I said, summertime. It was like, no way, that seems like it's only a few months ago, but it seemed like an absolute year ago. But if you write down the things you've done this year and achieved, like, it's pretty much nothing. So it's been like that, like it's dragged, but at the same time there's not much to show for it. Like the minute me and Mickey are building, we've moved studios out of Mickey's garage, building a new one in his back garden. At least that's nice, because I think at the end of the year there'll be at least something like tangible that we can look at and be like, right, well, at least we did that this year. But yeah, in a creative sense, it's been quite tough, really.
Yeah, like I think it was Tiger King, the program on Netflix came out in like the first lockdown not too long ago.
Yeah, so like obviously we're near the end. What have you got planned for the coming future?
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough, really, because venue-wise, we don't know when venue is going to be open again, and even then, like, every band in the world is going to want to tour. So we're going to then probably have to wait a little bit longer to tour. So, like, in a live sense, we're kind of desperate to get back to something as soon as possible. But, you know, we just have to be patient and wait. But we've got a lot of songs to record. So I think as soon as the studio's done in December, I think we'll just be in there from January the 1st, just getting as much stuff recorded as possible. Try and make up for the kind of time we've lost this year, really.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm so thankful we're finally coming towards the end of it. And it looks like, you know, the first vaccine today looks like we're finally going to be pushing through. And we're all looking forward to Christmas. Are you looking forward to Christmas?
Yeah, it should be lovely, actually. I think we're slightly nervous that my little boy's still at school. And obviously, if his bubble bursts in his class, then he'll have to isolate for 2 weeks. And it's kind of getting up to that window now where he would have to isolate over Christmas. So that's kind of a little bit nerve-wracking at the minute. But I think Christmas-wise, it'll be bittersweet, because I live in like Birmingham now, and I haven't been home up to Jarrow since last December. And I haven't seen my mum and dad since February, March time. And we're gonna go up on Boxing Day, but they've decided now that they just want to wait until the vaccine's sorted. So it'll be quite sad over Christmas, because I think it'll really kind of like hit home that I haven't seen them and they haven't seen the grandchildren for like the whole year. So it'll be lovely, but at the same time it'll be quite tough from that point of view, I think.
I think by the time Christmas comes around next year, everyone will just be so more appreciative of everything. Like,
yeah, definitely.
The one thing I'm already sick of hearing there is, "All I want for Christmas is you." I just feel like it's all I've heard. But like, what's your favourite Christmas song? I'll throw this out to you.
Favourite Christmas song? There's one that goes, Merry Christmas, and then it's kind of got the horn bit that goes do 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 do. I quite like that one. But yeah, the rest, like we put the Christmas tree up on Saturday, so I had kind of like a Spotify Christmas playlist. And I was saying that I reckon the standard of Christmas songs, because if it's a song about Christmas, it just gets on a playlist. But the standards, I think you have to have a lower standard of song. Like Elton John's got that Christmas song.
Yeah.
How does it go again? Like, get into Christmas. Da, 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 da. It's so crap compared to like songs. I think a lot of artists are like that. Like, they're just kind of, I don't know. It's almost it's enough that it's a Christmas song. So I'm not too big on Christmas music, especially as it's been since Halloween ended. It seems to have just been like wall to wall Christmas. So,
definitely. What's your Harry?
Yeah, I don't know.
Favorite Christmas song?
My favorite. I'm going to be really like obvious and traditional and be like that. Is it Fairy Tale New York? Is that the one?
All right, yeah.
Yeah. I did just that one. It's just, if you listen to like the lyrics and stuff, it's proper like in depth, isn't it? Really, and it's quite deep. Whereas like it's more of like a sadder Christmas song rather than like a Christmas song that spreads positivity and joy. It's more of a on the other side of things, isn't it? Because Christmas isn't the same for everyone, is it? So it's good to get the two mixes.
It's been getting a lot of criticism, hasn't it, for using the F word? Obviously, we can't use it, but I don't know. I mean, it's just political correctness gone mad in some ways. It's an old song. Just let it on the radio. But anyways, Rob, Little Comets. Would you ever release a Christmas song?
No, I don't think so.
That's out there.
Yeah, Mickey often, when he's twiddling away around Christmas time, he's got this idea of a song and it's called "Fuck Christmas," but I don't really think that's like in the spirit of things. So yeah, that one's kind of permanently shelved.
To be honest, I would love to hear it. I really would.
He's only got the first line. Really, it's he's not put much time into it. But yeah, I cannot see a Christmas release anytime soon.
Well, so today we've taken some questions from fans, and I'd just like to bring the first one in because it is talking about the end of 2020 and what's happened this year. And it's put, can Rob predict the events of 2020 in their next song, having released a song with the lyrics, "Are you ready for the sneeze? Are you ready for the disease to come? Separate from your children." Did you predict the virus?
yeah, definitely. So you'll have to wait and see. With first release of 2021, that people will have to wait and hear what's coming ahead. Like, I don't know. It's just one of those things, isn't it? Yeah. But you know what? Like, there's a lot of that coming, isn't there? It's just a matter of time before the world ends in some way. So we're just going to try and have fun until it does.
Very Christmassy.
That's why we're not going to release a Christmas song.
Obviously, being a band that you are, you've toured many times with many other bands. You toured with Pigeon Detectives and Catfish and the Bottlemen.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
How was that experience of touring with those two bands? And how was that?
Yeah, like completely different. Like Catfish, we've toured with them kind of like across almost every stage of their career. So like seeing them in their embryonic beginnings, because we did a gig with them like in Wigan, maybe 3 or 4 years before anybody ever heard of them. And you could tell like that Van had something about him. And then the first tour we did where they supported it was just great. I'd never kind of properly watched them live before. That was just as things were starting to take off. That was great. And then supporting them on their first big tour was great. It was lovely that they kind of returned the favour. Like a lot of bands don't or wouldn't do that, but the kind of they always have. And I think that's testament to how well we kind of got on with each other. And I think I like them because they've never changed as people, whether they were, playing to 80 people or kind of 8,000. It's the same level of performance, the same kind of like honesty of performance on stage, but also like behind it all, they're just, like exactly the same as they were, which is good really, because I think, again, not all bands, when they go through such a kind of meteoric rise, can keep that honesty and integrity that they kind of started out with. And the Pigeon Detectives, like we didn't really have any plans to tour, and that offer came through, and I think because we had nothing else to do, we thought it'd be a good one to do. And we knew of the Pigeon Detectives, like kind of everybody did, but we didn't know them. And we got on really well with them. The singer he broke his ankle or something. He does these big like stage jumps off the drum kit and like in the crowd. And early on in the tour, he broke his ankle, and we were like, well, that's the tour done. The next day in Middlesbrough, he turned up with a kind of protective cast around his foot. And we were like, right, well, he's obviously just going to stand there and do the gig. But by the end of it, he was doing huge stage jumps off the drum kit. I think that's kind of them in a nutshell, though. Just, like dead down to earth, nice people who just enjoyed playing the music with people. And I think it was lovely because I don't think they knew how the tour was going to be received, because it was like 10 years since the first album. That was the tour. But you could see that as the tour went on, they were kind of like getting more and more into it again.
So, like, obviously, you played with Catfish at Castlefield Bowl. I think that's when I first saw you. That was Was that your biggest to date back then?
Was that the biggest what? Sorry,
your biggest crowd?
No, I think our biggest crowd we did when the Olympics were on. We played like the torch relay, and we did kind of the regional one at Leeds. And there must be about 25,000 people there. But we just it's the first time we've done a really big gig like that, and we did not cope well with it. I think we made a mistake because the stage was so big, we set up with gear really far apart.
Yeah.
And I think actually when you play a big stage, most bands, again, they're still set up really tight. They just use the stage in a performance sense. But we didn't, we obviously never played a gig like that before. So that was a big gig, but it wasn't enjoyable. But I think by the time we then did the Catfish gig and we played a couple of arena gigs with them and playing bigger festivals, you kind of get used to it a bit more. I remember that night, that was a really enjoyable gig because the weather was nice. We had a good sound check. They always make sure you get a nice long sound check as a support, which again, a lot of bands don't do. And it was just the vibe. It was again, I think the people there, they could sense that this was the same band. They were seeing the same band that they'd seen in a 100. You probably found it in 100, 200 capacity venue. It was exactly the same performance. There were more lights and there was probably a video screen and the stage was bigger, but it was the same connection with the songs. And I remember watching that gig from the side and just feeling dead. It was just lovely to see them having gone from tiny rooms and having grafted for years to get to that point. And you could tell that they were enjoying it as well. Mm-hmm. They weren't freaked out by it. They weren't under too much pressure to perform. And it was just, I'm sure everyone in the crowd felt like it was a really special night.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you know when you're going out onto these big stages with a big crowd, do you get nervous still? Because you've been a band, what is it now, 12 years, I think I read. Quite a while.
Yeah, I'd say that's kind of gone. I think obviously when we first started, especially when we're kind of on Columbia and doing big gigs for the first time, there was definitely a bit we better have a good gig today. Whereas I think now we've realised that we're in it for different reasons. So we enjoy, we love what we do, and it's lovely to play live. And there's never been a correlation either for us between the size of venue and the enjoyment of the gig. We've had enjoyable gigs. One of my favourite gigs ever was in a pub in Sheffield to 80 people. Mm. That gig should have been awful, and it was amazing because there was just a connection there with the crowd. Yeah. I think we realised kind of in the few years following that there was just no point in being nervous because it doesn't help. And it doesn't matter. You know what? What's the worst thing that can happen? You go on stage and have a bad gig.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, you could do that even if you weren't nervous. And I think, that's kind of gone now. And it's nice because you can just enjoy gigs then. You kind of enjoy the moment. And it's just it's lovely to be able to do. Playing at 50 people or playing at 5,000. It's just, it's just nice. It's nice to do.
Mm. See, if it was me, I find it really daunting. Whether it was 5 people or 5,000, I'd feel nah, I'm all right. Cheers.
Yeah. I suppose we've been because me and Mickey as well and Matt have been in bands since we were 12 and 13. Mm. And we've kind of I don't know how many gigs we've done now in our lives, but I think we've kind of almost lived every disaster as well that could happen on stage.
Mm.
It really isn't. It's never that bad. You get over it. So
what sort of disasters?
I remember we did a gig when we were 12, 13. We were in this kind of really awful covers band, and we're playing a gig for children in need at this big theatre in Newcastle. And the keyboard player had, for some reason, accidentally tuned his piano down like half a tone. So he was completely out of tune. When we started playing, you knew something was wrong, but you were locked into that 4 minutes of the song. So you just had to get through it. But we thought it was our guitars, so we were trying to tune guitars, and it was just...
No.
So that was a shocker. Like, Matt's broken bones on tour before, so he's had to play like sitting in a chair. Breaking strings, a bad moment. Like, we used to use a laptop for setting off samples. Like, the laptop used to often go down on stage. It's just like... you just get on with it.
Yeah.
I imagine it's like it's one of the things that can't be helped, can it? Like, if something happens,
yeah, I definitely.
Like if a string goes, for example, that's like brilliant. You have to,
as well. Like, we've done some terrible gigs. Like, before anybody has ever heard who we were, we did a festival in Redcar, which is like 20 minutes down the road near Middlesbrough. And we literally played to one man and a dog. There was a bloke walking past and he stopped with his dog. And I think when you've done a gig like that, it's like, well, nothing's going to be worse than that.
I think did we have a guest on, or I can't remember, but I saw a story of this band that were playing in a pub and no one showed up. So there was like just one man, obviously a local, in there. So they all started playing, because, as you would, and they walked up and he unplugged their amp. Sat back down.
Wow. So it can get worse than one man in a dog.
It's just like, not for me.
Wow, that's harsh. That's harsh.
You're gutted as a band.
You know what? Sometimes you get someone in the audience. We did a gig at Portsmouth in the last tour, and there was a few people there. And but there was this one guy, and then he's standing in the middle of the room, right in my line of sight. And for the whole gig, his face was just like a stone, and he was not enjoying the gig. And even though other people were enjoying the gig, it just destroyed my entire gig, because I spent the gig thinking, what am I doing wrong? Is it me? Am I having a bad night? Does he not like the songs, or has he come liking the band and then he's decided that actually terrible live? And I couldn't get it out of my head. And I spent the whole gig trying to kind of get this bloke to enjoy the gig, but he was just maybe he just wasn't a very expressive person on the inside. He was loving it, but it was, when that happens, like that can kill a gig. Like, it could be 500 people going mad for it, but if there's one person standing in the middle of the room, arms folded, it's just like, oh no, you're killing me gig.
Was that one of your gigs, or were you a support band for that?
No, it was one of our gigs. I kind of tried, because we always go on the merch at the end as well, and I tried to kind of like see if I could catch him on the way out, just to say, like, are you all right? Like, what was it? Because I wanted to know what it was.
So what's like the difference between headlining your own gig and being a support band?
I think preparation wise, you don't always get a good sound check. Sometimes bands and the crew can be like a little bit standoffish towards you, which is just weird, really. Like, we did a tour early on, with a Twang. And I don't know if their crew had just been instructed to, but they were just like horrible to her. Like, they wouldn't move gear. They were like making unpleasant comments, and one of them like ended up like pushing Mickey halfway through the tour. So we just said, right, we're not, we're off home. We're not putting up for that. Whereas if it's your gig, you can kind of just, the schedule is yours, so you're often like a bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
And then like the way you approach things as well, you have to think your set differently. So you'll have a shorter set. And I think early on we used to be like, right, we need to kind of show people that they haven't come to see us, but they need to go home and remember us. And I think, again, as we've got older, we treat them more in the same way. That, like, there's not really any point in having that attitude of, we've got to go and convince all the crowd to come and see our next gig and da. Yeah, so there's differences, but I wouldn't say I have a preference either way, really.
We spoke to Frank Turner a few weeks ago, and he was talking about when he supports. He was saying there's a lot less pressure because like they're not there to see you. So
right, okay, yeah.
you just go and play, like you play your own music. If you get a few fans doing it, then fair enough. But it's more of like you can just have fun with it, rather than when you're headlining, people are there to see you, so you feel more pressure to like put on a show, I suppose.
Yes, yeah, I kind of know that. But I think then again, like the highest moments I've had on stage have been at headline gigs, where because you can kind of like, when you're picking a longer set, you can really, by the end of a tour, you can get to the stage where you know emotionally what works. So you know when it's going to peak for the crowd, and inevitably, like if you're riding on the emotion of the crowd, it'll peak for you as well. And I think that relationship between you and the people that are there to listen to your music. If I've ever had a transcendent moment on stage, like it's been when it's been a warm gig. So yeah, like, but you know, the flip side of that is that if you're having a bad one, then you kind of feel that more as well, because you almost feel like you're letting people down, that they've come to see you and for whatever reason you feel like it might be fine, but you might feel like it's just not, for whatever reason, it's just not working.
So like, what would you say in your favourite gig?
Favourite gig?
Yeah.
Like a few really. I remember that gig in Sheffield. It was like the night before Tramlines, and we'd been asked to play like the Fringe. Would you play on the Sunday on the main stage when it was in the middle of Sheffield, so it was like almost like a South by Southwest in Sheffield. It was like every pub had something on. It was like brilliant. And we turned up and we're like, really, like, we're going to play here? And I think Catfish were playing as well, like a really early Catfish, because Van was like, oh, was that gig? And we went in, and it just for whatever reason, it was electric. Like the people there were really into it, and we just got carried away. And I'll always remember that gig. When we played in America for the first time, we did a gig in New York, and there was loads of people there. And I think after we got dropped by Columbia, we never then had any. I think we kind of thought that had gone unless something strange happened. And I think if you'd have told us when we were like starting writing songs, 11 or 12, that one day we'd do a headline gig in New York and there'd be people there, like that would have been really like cool. And I think because we were all there, we appreciated it more, and we all had a moment. And that whole tour was just like, it was like being in a band again for the first time, like away from home and exploring a new country together. And we all took it in and appreciated it. And it wasn't, there was no pressure on it. I think we knew that it didn't matter if we sold loads of albums in America, because just like by that point in my career, that's not what drives me. So we just enjoyed it, no pressure. So yeah, that kind of whole tour. And then we got to go back a year after and do a gig at Governor's Ball, a festival in New York. And that whole day was great as well, because it was just like, I don't know, it was just like Damon Albarn was playing later that day. And we didn't have a keyboard. We'd forgotten my keyboard stand, so we couldn't exactly go home for it. And his text lent with a keyboard stand. I remember me and Mickey being a bit like when we were little, it was like Oasis and Blur, and we loved both. But if you'd have told me that years later you'd be borrowing a keyboard stand off Damon Albarn, it would be like the best thing ever. And luckily we weren't so far at our own backsides that we weren't able to enjoy it. Like it was, you know, I think we were really appreciative of the opportunity. So it was just gigs like that.
You just mentioned about Oasis and Blur. Would that type of music be your main influence, or has it changed over like the years you've been a band?
I think we became interested in being in a band in that time period, because it was basically all bands then. Like there was a period as well where they just built like an arena in Newcastle, and it's an awful sounding building, but Blur played, Oasis played, Ocean Colour Scene played. Can't remember who else played. But it was almost like every month there was another band played. And that was our first kind of time of going to gigs as well.
Yeah.
But in terms of influence, like I can't remember the last time I put on a Blur album or an Oasis album. But stuff like Paul Simon when I was growing up. Just like whatever my mum and dad would play in the house. And then, I don't know, just like anything. Like there's not a lot of stuff that will be like, oh, I don't like that sort of music, I don't like that sort of music. So I think we've never, like we've always liked being in a band, but we've never, it's never been like, right, we like Oasis, so we'll write songs like Oasis.
Yeah.
We've never kind of had a blueprint. I think we've always tried to just clear our heads when we write a song, just sit down and write. There's very rare will be a time where it's like, oh, I like this song by this band, let's try and emulate that kind of soundscape.
So I would also ask around Rob's view of technology. In several lyrics, he references the negative effect that phones and even television is having on society. Is it an issue with regards to social norms and even injustices it tries to push? Or is it the more personal effects of losing the ability to converse face to face? A very complex question.
Yeah, that is a bit complex, isn't it?
Whoever's asked that question, I think they've obviously already thought about the answer. Yeah, I don't know. I think it is a shame that, a lot of the time, I remember it was, for some reason, the day after the general election, whenever that was, like this last year. No, it wasn't the winter one. I think it was the summer one. Maybe it was. I was on a train going into Birmingham, and there was nobody talking to each other. And you looked up and down the carriage, and everybody was just on a phone. And I just thought, like, that's such a shame that you've lost kind of. No one was looking up to see what was going on around them. Nobody was interacting with each other. Nobody was looking out the window. It was just everybody was on a phone. And I watched it. It was a documentary on iPlayer called Hypernormalization. I can't remember the name of the filmmaker. But it just kind of like, just the idea that a phone just reflects you back at you, like what you want to see, viewpoints that you either already agree with or are going to like provoke some sort of reaction. It just keeps you in like a little bubble in which directs you on what to do, what to eat, what to buy, knows when you sleep. Like phones know everything about you, and it is quite, it's like, I remember somebody saying that, you're heading towards like 1984, where actually it's far more like a book called A Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. And that's almost more frightening than the kind of 1984 scenario. So, yeah, you just see it with your, like kids as well, just staring at a screen.
Yeah.
I was about to touch on that, like saying like when I was a kid growing up, it was so different to how it is now. Like when I was a kid, I used to be like outside, like playing football in the street, that kind of thing, like climbing a tree, falling out the tree, myself.
But that I think that's kind of like the fear element, isn't it? Like I would never let my little boy go outside and play football in the front, because what about the road? What about someone coming to take him away?
Yeah.
Whereas like those things were still there when I was little, but it was just like, well, the fear didn't trump the the positive aspect of it, what you got out of it. And I think that's a shame. And that there is like an erosion of trust in other people and other people's intentions. And I think that's not helped by the fact that day to day you don't really socialize with people that you would never socialize with before. Like it's, I don't know. It's not particularly, like the whole direction of travel in the world is not particularly healthy. Like like the way we treat the environment is horrific. And then kind of like the platitudes you get, we'll do this and we'll do that, and it's almost like, well, you bury it for a while and then it resurfaces again. And if you've got somebody who is just staring at a device all day or getting everything, it takes away your ability to think, I think. I don't know. Maybe I just sound like a bit of a
Do you think
Luddite.
like being in these lockdowns, right, will change the way people look at things, like in terms of socialise with their mates, do you think, and going to gigs, etc.? Do you think we took it for granted when we didn't all have this COVID stuff, and now we're all like, oh, actually, I just miss talking to my mates or going out with my mates. Now it's like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's instead of us being at a pub or whatever on our phones with our mates, we'd rather just be sat there, not on our phones, talking to them. You get what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. I think at first it was like that, but it's almost like you become conditioned to it after a while. Like if I watch a program on the telly now and you see somebody kind of shaking hands with somebody or going into a house, and you're like, oh, why haven't they got a mask on? Or I know it's illogical, but that is my mindset now. Like, oh, what, you're not social distancing, and it's become such a part of the fabric of life that. But then I don't know, like it was wild in the summer where it stopped, and it was like the floodgates had opened and everybody was doing everything again. And I don't know, because I think Mickey's a really good example. Like Mickey, his son, Mickey homeschools his son. They don't have a car. They gave up the car. And a lot of the things that their lives weren't that affected by the lockdown that much. I think they were kind of hoping that it would almost be, for some people, a realization that you don't need to, you can kind of consume things that don't require like an enormous resource, or you don't maybe need to consume as much,
Yeah.
And I think that I was trying to take that as a positive when we were first in lockdown, that maybe people would think more about how you can be like responsible and live a bit more sustainably. But the actual effect seems to have been that if you take something away, people are then like completely desperate to have it back, that it comes back even more so. Like the things that you missed, you're gonna do them even more when like lockdown finishes.
Yeah.
And I think that's a shame, because there's definitely aspects of the way we live that aren't great, and that being a bit more circumspect and thinking, do I really need to do this? I think that could be a real like positive about having to be with yourself for a while. Obviously, that's not the same for everybody, but I think like the way you live, it has been a good opportunity to almost like do an audit on yourself and think, well, like, am I living in a way which is going to help the planet survive? Because I don't know. I think that is the main, like people talk about Brexit and they talk about the pandemic, but actually the real threat at the minute, and has been for years, on our lives is what we do in the environment.
Yeah, well, you've kind of like touched on this final question what I've got for you, which is like talking about how you seem to have a lot of anger at society and the way it's working at the moment. And the question is just, is writing songs a good way for you to like funnel your anger?
Yeah, I think in terms of like, I wouldn't say I'm angry. I definitely get angry about things, but I think it's more frustration.
Yeah.
And kind of almost being able to see the direction of travel, but not being able to do anything about it. And maybe it's a bit of that. I feel frustrated that I don't think ultimately anybody's going to do anything about it, because I think that the systems and the power base, like the people who are going to be affected by global catastrophe, are normal people. Like, firstly, it'll be in countries which are 1,000 miles away from ours, so nobody's going to really give a shit. And then when it hit home, as normal, it'll be the poorest people, and then it'll work its way up. But the people that will never be affected are the people that, hold the power. They'll be able to get away to an underground bunker or ride it out. And, I think I'm probably right about it, because it's almost like I just feel that there's a lot of futility. And if I didn't write about it, then I'd almost be just succumbing to it. That attitude that you can't do anything about it, so what's the point? Whereas at least, I don't know, subconsciously, maybe if I'm writing about it, I feel that I'm doing something about it.
Yeah.
And I do, like, sometimes writing a song is a really joyful thing. And it's just about an expression of, like, catching an idea that's floating by in the wind, like almost not my tune, not my words. I just kind of like catch it. Like, I like that idea that songs are floating about and you just channel them somehow. But sometimes, like, it is a really cathartic thing, and especially lyrically, I do sometimes feel like I need to write about this, because you can talk about it, but, like, I think the way I don't often express myself well when I'm using words or talking to somebody, especially if it's something I feel passionate about. Whereas with a song, because I write the word second, I have a defined amount of syllables that I need to get my point across in. So I have to be considered. It has to make sense, which some of the time it probably doesn't. But yes, I think it's definitely a cathartic thing. It's not, I wouldn't say I'm angry about it. It's just, I think it's sad. Like, when you think about it, it's sad, because I look at my children and I think, what's the world going to be like in 30 years' time? And then I think, well, what about my grandchildren, if I have any grandchildren? And the direction of travel is not good, and it's worrying, because I think people are complacent. I think ultimately people have the attitude that, well, they'll find something that'll sort it out, and people aren't going to change what they do and the way they consume, because they'll just rely on somebody else. And I think if the coronavirus can teach you anything, it's that you can't, if something does take hold, then actually you don't have any control over it, and somebody isn't going to come along really and sort it out. There's going to be pain, and there's going to be people who suffer. But you can guarantee that the people who are going to be in pain and are going to suffer aren't going to be the people who are making the decisions.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's the most frustrating aspect of it, I think. That, you could do something about it. Like, it's pretty magnificent, really, that a whole country did pretty much say, right, well, we're not going to do anything for 2 weeks. We're going to come together and we are going to do something for the betterment of society. And as tough as it was, and obviously it went on for more than 2 weeks, but it just shows that, like, collectively you can cajole people into changing massive aspects of their life to better the future. And if you can do it for, something which is life-threatening but isn't a planet ender, really, then why can't you do something about an issue which, like, is going to end the planet? And the only conceivable reason is that it doesn't benefit those who want to cling onto power and wealth.
Yeah, definitely.
You mentioned about people being in charge. One of them recently said about musicians need to retrain as something else. What would you retrain as? Which is, it's a ridiculous comment anyway, but
I think probably a labourer, because I've quite enjoyed the last few months of, like, working in building the studio, because, like, it's nice to work with your hands. I really enjoy, like, I'm not very good, but I really like use a lot of wood. I like working with wood. Sounds quite ridiculous. But the main thing about it is it's nice to have something tangible at the end of the day. If we work on a song all day and it's rubbish, you've literally done nothing with your day, really.
Yeah.
You can go backwards as much as you go forwards, but as long as you don't accidentally knock a wall down, like with working on the studio, like, I have a task list, and at the end of the day I can be like, all right, I did that today. So I think, like I've really like say me and Mickey have got on better the last few months than we have done for ages working in the studio because we've had like a common goal.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like if I have to retrain, then I have to retrain.
I mean, for me, I'm just hoping the podcast takes off because I once did manual labour and I was on a forklift and I accidentally took a full wall down because I went into it. But I don't think that's for me. I'll stick to sitting in my room.
That's impressive.
Thank you for your time and thank you for your honesty. It's been a great interview. Thank you.
No, but I know you said it was a Christmassy one, but I hope I haven't kind of taken the joy out of Christmas for anybody listening to it.
Sorry. I've just got one last request. One of my friends at work is a huge fan of Little Comets. Is there any chance you could wish him a Merry Christmas? To George.
Yeah, George.
No, Josh.
Josh. Yeah. Well, if anyone's called George listening, Merry Christmas. But also, yeah, Merry Christmas, Josh. Hope you have a lovely time and a peaceful new year.
Thank you. And Josh, that's your secret Santa, so don't expect anything in the post. And cheers for watching. If you enjoyed this, leave a like, subscribe, and cheers.